Welcome to Running on Reddit r/ProRevenge, where people get back at someone after being wronged in a pro-revenge way. Background information: we live in an old and big manor that has been split into 3 attached houses. The houses are about 150 years old and were built around 5 huge giant sequoias which were about 200 years old. In the UK, giant sequoias are very rare, and the 2 in our garden up the house price by about £60,000. We live next to 2 really nice neighbors, one young couple and one old couple. The story: unfortunately, our old neighbors passed away, so their child and her family moved in. Let's call her Jo. Jo was instantly a pain in the butt. We had been sharing chickens with the previous neighbors, and Jo agreed to keep sharing them. However, on her nights she would constantly forget to put them away, so we would have to check them every night anyway. One night, her little brats thought it would be funny to open our personal duck pen in the night, which leads to a mass slaughter. Later, the chickens went the same way. About 2 years ago there was a storm, and one of her sequoias somehow fell over and died. They were distraught, understandably, but from then on, the jealousy started. She would constantly complain about how lucky we were to have 2 sequoias in our garden, and how our sequoia was making too much shade in their garden. It wasn't. Anyway, we just thought it was Jo being a pain. There were a few dry threats, like they will chop it down or maybe the next storm will blow it down. Until we came back from a holiday to France to find a huge 6-meter stump and nothing else. I mean, how the duck do you get rid of a 100-foot tree in like 2 weeks? 2 of our old British oak trees had been crushed as well. My mum and sisters were crying. My dad was red in the face, and we had no evidence Jo had done it. She claimed that there had been a storm, and she had to get rid of it. We had a security camera at the front of the house, but you can get in the back if you go through a few fields. We then were given an £8,000 bill for damages to her property, and to have the tree chopped up and removed. The wood alone would have been worth a small fortune. We had lost all hope and 2 weeks had passed when my dad came running in from the garden. We had put up a wildlife camera a few months ago and had caught everything. We got a lawyer on the phone and started our revenge. We got a tree surgeon out who said it was an original specimen brought into the UK in 1860. Along with it to that were in Ilvaston Castle Country Park. There were 218 around the UK, but only 60 now. He also told us to call out an engineer because the roots might be in the foundation, so when they rot, it could damage the house. Turns out, we would need to redo the foundations. Then we took Jo to court and sued them for damage to property, trespassing and lots of other smaller claims. The tree would cost $250,000 to have another sequoia that was 200 years put in and looked after. It's basically impossible. Plus, the damage to the foundation, which was $200,000, and the 2 oaks, which were another $25,000. So, with the smaller claims, it went to about £500,000, about $700,000. They had to move out. Why invest in the stock market of vintage cars when you can just buy and hold trees? Trees, the new currency for the modern man. About 10 years ago, my landlord died. Or, at least the person who owned the place we were renting. The property managers had been delightful, but whoever inherited wanted to sell, so the house was for sale. Enter an idiot. We'll call him Jack, who decides to buy the place. Now ours was the top floor, that is, attic converted into a suite of a house, less than 35 square meters, 375 square feet. The bathroom was literally where the stairs up to the top floor used to be. The place was tiny. Jack came to check out the place, as you should, before buying a place. He had one of those Bluetooth earpieces in, and I can't even remember if he even acknowledged us. He spent about 30 to 45 seconds in our suite. Next time we hear from him is about a month later. Apparently he bought the place. He stops by to give us a notice of rent increase, effective in 6 months, legal minimum, from $485 to $795. The place is not worth that much. We say nuts to that and decide to buy a house, since, what the hell, it's not much more per month. Surprise to anyone who's never bought a house, it was more than just mortgage payments. We give him all the required notice to move out. We move and clean the place up really well. Mind you, when my partner moved in it was not especially clean. and we happen to have the move-in inspection which mentions this. Jack decides to try to scam us for $80 of our damage deposit for cleaning. He doesn't provide the required forms, just says, "I'm going to hold $80 from your damage deposit for cleaning." We respond with, no, you're not. Jack, assuming we need the cash for our next damage deposit or bills, and will settle for anything. "Take this or I'm going to keep your whole deposit." Cue revenge. So he decides to just keep the whole deposit, $485. I file paperwork with the rentalsman, who unsurprisingly, after their investigation, rule in my favor. He's ordered to refund the whole deposit, but Jack decides not to pay, and the rentalsman doesn't have any enforcement powers. So I have to go to the local sheriff's office. They can send a legal demand letter for the deposit plus costs, but it will cost me $100 to $150. I forget, upfront. Sure, go ahead. Jack decides to ignore the sheriff's kindly letter. Sheriffs say that they can start proceedings to recover the debt plus costs, but I again have to pay up front, about $250, and it might take quite a while. I guess most people quit at this point. Being out of pocket approximately $700, throwing more money at the problem and maybe having to wait months didn't appeal to them. And there's also a chance you never collect. I chose to pay the sheriffs. They sent another, less friendly letter to Jack. But here's the best part. Now that they're recovering a debt, they're going to recover on all of the outstanding judgments against him. And, apparently, he has tried this crap before. They sent him another couple letters, pay up or else. Jack chose else. Then they seized title to Jack's giant white SUV. I can't remember what it was, but not a cheap one. They didn't physically take it away or anything, but they gave him 30 days to pay all the judgments against him, or they would take it and sell it at auction. Somehow he all of a sudden found the money. My share. 485 plus 150 plus 250 equals $885. The other people who'd registered judgments, but not paid to start the collections processes were about $5,000 more. I can't remember how long the whole process took, at least 6 months though. Crazy isn't it how a property doubles in value, yet nothing actually changed about it? Market changes they call it. Haha. In this instance, yeah, right. Shortly after my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, my formerly estranged half-brother quit his job and moved in to help take care of my dad. Though there really wasn't enough money, it was agreed to pay him around $300 a week to make up for his missing income. During this time, my half-brother abruptly acquired durable power of attorney and usurped medical and financial. My mother and father had separate financial lives, decisions. Several documents relating to my dad's pension, which were now my half-brother's responsibility, were not turned in on time, resulting in my dad missing out on a one-time payout of $8,000 and lowering his pension payout by $300 per month. My half-brother then cleaned out my dad's remaining savings, about $3,000, not discovered until about a month later. 6 days later, our father hung himself in the basement. My dad left all of his insurance money and belongings to my mother. Us children were left with only sentimental items. My half-brother was visibly upset and shaking when the will was read. He acknowledged that my mother was receiving everything and left. About a month later we discovered the missing money. Though he broke no laws, because he had power of attorney, we insisted he pay it back, even offered to let him make payments over a 2-year period. He refused and we have been no contact for 2 years now. Little did he know that he was in my mom's, his stepmother's, will. He would receive half of what is currently a $250,000 estate. I suggested to my mother that she remove him from the will. She did and I'm now the sole beneficiary. He stole $3,000 now, only to lose out on $125,000 later. Leeching off a family member is disgusting. It is a good thing OP pushed to have the estranged brother removed from the will. Serves him right. If you like the content and want to support the channel, like and subscribe right now, or you'll be running on fumes. I spent about 10 years teaching high school humanities at a small private school. For my first 2 years, I didn't have a classroom, just a small office. I would bring what I needed for each class on a cart and go from room to room, depending on which teacher had a prep at any given time. This was incredibly inconvenient, and, not being the most organized of teachers to begin with, made things difficult to keep track of. There were a group of 11th grade boys who decided to make things a little more difficult for me. They were good kids, we got along well, I coached several of them on the school soccer team, but they decided that, since my office would often be empty, it was a great place to prank. It was never anything too serious, things falling over when I opened the door, or things disappearing for a day and then turning up in a different place the next day. Nothing was ever damaged, and I could never prove who it was, even though I knew. My school had mandatory final exams in each academic course. I didn't really think they were necessary, so I would generally make them pretty easy with a lot of preparation. I would give out study sheets and play review games for a couple of weeks before the test, and there was no reason the students wouldn't do well on them. I had approval of admin to do this as they weren't particularly fond of the final exam rule either. It was a school board policy. A few nights before the offending boys had their exam, I had a brainwave. I created a second exam. Gone were the multiple choice questions and obvious things from the review sheets. In their place came detailed questions about concepts that were briefly mentioned in class. Essay question after essay question. Ambiguous questions with no clear answers. Definitions of words that there was no way they knew. It took a couple of hours, but I laughed the whole time. When the test came, I had the special exams at the bottom of the pile and handed them out to each of the 4 or 5 boys. I told my vice principal what was happening and he insisted on being present. I started the timer and watched as the boys flipped over their papers. It was all I could do to keep a straight face. Eyes went wide. Heads were shaking. Panic was setting in, especially as they saw all their classmates flying through their exams. One of the boys raised their hand. Sorry, no questions during the final. You should be prepared, based on your study sheets. I let them go for about 5 or 10 minutes of terror before I gathered the fake tests and gave them the real ones. They all passed with flying colors and never pranked my office again. It was glorious. The teacher certainly found a unique way to prank those pranksters. Those essay questions are the worst. So many possibilities, yet only one right answer. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on the bell or you'll be running on fumes. See you in the next video.